Welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about my first spiritual awakening and how I determined that it was a spiritual awakening. When I was 20, I had a manic episode, which ended up with me being in the hospital and getting put on mood stabilizing medications for 3 years until I decided to get off of them. What I knew for certain was that I had experienced all the textbook symptoms of mania, but there were some other things that I went through that I couldn't find any answers to. I remember everything from my manic episode. I was conscious of it all. I just had no control over it. I remember during my manic episode, I was overcome with like a huge wave of paranoia. In that whole mentality, like, I'm God, I need to save the world kind of thing. I became really scared because I was like, oh my God, I'm the chosen one. Everyone's going to come after me now. I'm not safe anywhere. And that paranoia evolved to become specifically on men. And I remember the day before I was hospitalized, it was so bad that anytime somebody resembling a man walked past me on the street, I would just like freeze and like I was so petrified. Through a lot of healing work, I kind of got over that and I got to the root of where that was from. But basically that paranoia that I experienced during my manic episode was all of my deepest fears coming up to the surface. After the hospitalization and once I got put on meds, I remember my mind never quite came back to normal. I remember for about 3 months after the hospitalization, it was as if my brain had reset itself. I had to drop my college courses that semester and I quit all of my jobs. I struggled to like put my words together. It was really bad. And, over time it came back, but it was never like fully back to that expression and creativity that I had before all of this happened. I couldn't quite pinpoint what triggered it. Like, the doctors were like, well, if it wasn't drugs, because I don't do drugs, then probably it was just stress. Or maybe it's genetic. Stress definitely had something to do with it. But genetics, no one in my immediate line of family, and I'm close with pretty much most of my extended family too, no one had experienced something like that before. So it just didn't make any sense. I had cycled through multiple psychiatrists, just asking the same questions, like what happened to me, what caused it, how can I prevent it, how long do I have to stay on these meds? And like nobody really gave me a solid answer, so I had to start seeking out online. I remember I was reading academic journals and joining these online support groups to hear about other people's experiences. There was no one who I could find who experienced something quite like I did. And I came to the conclusion, bipolar, which is the diagnosis you get for your first manic episode, like that's all it takes. Bipolar is not a real mental illness. It's like a catch-all illness. If you're like depressed, you can also get diagnosed with that. Or like hypomania, which is like a less severe form of mania, but still like you're kind of up there, you'll get diagnosed with it. I kept on going to the psychiatrists because every single one told me, like, you have bipolar now, you have to stay on these meds for life, otherwise this could happen again. You could lose your mind again. So I had that fear planted in my mind that I need to keep taking these meds, and the only way I could get these meds was by seeing these psychiatrists every month. And every appointment was just like, how have you been? Have you been manic? No? Here's your newest prescription. And every time I would come with that question, like, how long do I have to keep taking these? What I got from those doctors was that they are maintenance medications, basically mood stabilizers. It's supposed to help you balance being too happy, which you might, spiral into mania, or being too sad, where you might spiral into like a depressive episode. I didn't feel like myself at all at any point while I was taking those meds. I felt brain fog all the time. I was having so much trouble concentrating. I didn't feel anything. Like my world was just so gray. And I remember it was hard for me to enjoy the things that I used to. I couldn't enjoy art. I just completely stopped listening to music because it just wasn't doing anything for me. I remember thinking like, is this what it feels like to be normal? I don't know if I want to be normal anymore. I stayed on those meds because I was so scared of that manic episode and the hospitalization happening again. When I was 23, I had an unplanned pregnancy, which I wrote a whole article about it on my Medium blog if you're up for a little read. That unplanned pregnancy made me choose to stop taking my meds. Like cold turkey, I quit them because all of my psychiatrists had told me that there's an unknown risk that these mood stabilizers pose on pregnancies. And at the time, I wasn't sure if I would keep it or not. And I remember the final psychiatrist I saw, they told me that no one is forcing me to take these meds. And if I were to stop taking them, just be aware of the risks. With that in mind, I just paid extra more attention to my moods and my thoughts, because I believe, and I still do, that I can catch myself before it gets bad again. After the pregnancy thing was resolved, I chose to not get back on my medications. And here's why. The whole time I was on meds, I remember feeling like I had to pretend to be normal. I straight up felt like an alien in my body, like I was just operating this meat suit. But I didn't have like an inner voice to like tell me to question these things. It was just kind of like fear kept it silent. Fear was like, no, we're gonna keep taking these meds even though you know full well that this is why you are the way you are right now. By the time that inner voice had faded away, I kind of had a circle of people, my family, my ex-partner, who I had trusted, and I pretty much just let them drive my life for me. Whatever they said was right, I did that. Nothing felt normal. I was just constantly uncomfortable. I'm gonna put a little clip up here for you to see. This was me about 2.5 years into taking those daily medications. And you can just see on my face, I mean, I can see that I was there, but like not really there, if you know what I mean. One other thing I wanted to mention that was probably obvious in that video, those meds, I just kept on gaining weight, and I even tried going to the gym, and I was burning lots of calories, but the weight kept coming, and I just kind of lost hope. I lost interest in that because I was like, it's okay, I know that the meds are doing this. Mood stabilizers do have a tendency to cause weight gain. After a month of being off of my daily medications, I started to feel like myself again. It didn't feel like I was a zombie anymore. I became more sensitive to my body's needs. Like, my body's needs to rest. My body's needs to eat. I feel like I was just deaf to those things the entire time that I was on those meds. I started listening to my body more. I started honoring her needs. And that was kind of when more things started coming up that I wasn't ready for either. Because my intuition started questioning all of my life choices. That was my reawakening. It was as if I had just like woken up from a dream. I remember I was starting to become conscious of how I was being mistreated at work. And I was becoming conscious of how I was being blatantly disrespected in my romantic relationship. And I was just like, how come I didn't catch any of this before? But it was because I was like in that trance. I was in that state of mind under the influence of those medications where I just didn't have that drive to question it. One friend told me that when she meets people who are on those kinds of medications, that she can't feel their energy. It's like their energy is stagnant. As I pursued my spiritual journey more, I sought out Irah Morffi's Higher Beings Academy. She posted some videos of herself telling her story of how she had been in and out of psych wards, spoke with all these different spiritual teachers and shamans to figure out what was happening with her and to actualize her spiritual gifts. And I just resonated so much with her psych ward experiences and stuff, being with my hospitalization and the experiences that I had while I was manic. I reached out to her, desperate. I was like, hey, I'm like really seeking some guidance here. I feel like I'm scared of this happening again, but I don't want to go back on my meds. But if I tell a traditional therapist what is going on now, I'm scared that I'll get hospitalized again. She got on a call with me and spoke to me a little bit more about this. Basically, a manic episode is when your crown chakra gets bursted wide open and you're getting all this like spiritual information, which I definitely was getting. I remember I was seeing all kinds of weird synchronicities that I could not wrap my head around, and I didn't grow up with religion, so I couldn't, everything that I was saying sounded absolutely insane to like the people around me, my family and my friends, because I never used to speak like that. The part where it gets dangerous is when you have a very ungrounded root chakra, responsible for feeling safe. At that point in my life, I had never felt true safety in my body, in my mind, and in my surroundings. I grew up in a very chaotic household. My parents were always fighting, and they ended up getting a divorce way late. But up until that point, it was just always a very colorfully worded household. I remember never being able to fully feel like I could relax there. My breath was just always up at my chest. By the time I started college, I was starting to pick up all these jobs just so that I could avoid coming home to all of that. Right before the mania started to enter my reality, it was getting a lot. I was working like 3 jobs, and classes were about to start soon, and the fights were getting worse. I remember that time, it was like I couldn't catch a breath. I couldn't get a break. There was nowhere safe for me to breathe. And that's what triggered it. That feeling of not feeling safe anywhere, anytime. My soul became so uncomfortable in my body that it kind of detached itself. I hadn't been sleeping. Like, I was running off like an hour, 2 hours of sleep a night, because that's all I needed. I would wake up full energy, and had all these ideas, talking really fast. Because my mind was so awake and active all the time, my body couldn't even keep up with her. And my body was falling asleep while my mind was still awake. The day before I was hospitalized, I spent a whole day hanging out around town with a friend. We would be walking and I would just like collapse on the ground, still talking, still yapping my mouth. And then I would like get recharged up and then keep going. And that just kept happening. I would just like fall on the ground and I straight up could not get up. Like, my body was asleep. It was asleep. My mind was still awake. Your soul doesn't need rest. Isn't that the craziest thing? A couple other funky things that was happening. I remember I was seeing orbs floating around, colorful rainbow orbs that I now know are spirit guides or angels, whatever you're inclined to believe. But I saw them with my eyes everywhere, and that was freaky at the time. I remember feeling a lot of shame, and it was very much outward shame. I remember my family was telling me to not talk about it because I still didn't have a full understanding of it. I was just like, I'm so embarrassed by what I did while I was manic. But I also remember I was very much inclined to believe what I was experiencing was very magical. That whole ordeal is where I found my spark again, because when I was in that hospital, I saw horrible things, and I want to make a whole video talking about that experience. But basically, I could sense energies when I was in there. I could sense who had good intent and who did not care. And it made me have that passion that I have found now again to speak about these things and to bring awareness to these things and why healing is important, so that we can all strive to create a kinder world. I'm 24 now and have been committed to my spiritual journey since I started doing van life. It's almost a year now, and I will say the good parts of my manic episode, I feel them now, and they're here with me every single day, where colors are so much brighter and I can just see the good in everyone and everything, and I'm so excited about life and everything feels so magical. I have that. Now it's different because I'm able to control it. I don't let that extreme excitement or extreme despair carry me away anymore. And I do believe that my manic episode was my spiritual awakening, my first official one, and it kind of gave me a sneak peek into my psychic abilities, which is something that we all have. Surrounding myself with more people who were awakened to this and validated me for my experiences and didn't call me crazy for sharing the things that I was seeing and feeling helped a lot in bringing me closer to myself and bringing me closer to source energy or divine or creator or God or universe, whatever you want to call it. Intentionally practicing grounding has been a lifesaver for me. Feet to the ground every single day, no questions asked, hugging a tree, because I can't explain it to you unless you felt this before and believe in this magic too. Now once you do that, like you just feel like a whoosh, whoo, like a relief once that happens. Being here right now and appreciating the beauty that's all around me, that helps me kind of come back to earth. Breath work, of course, just bring me back into my gut and not my chest. And just healing, straight up facing my fears and getting to the root of all my traumas and addressing them. That way I don't keep seeing the world through the lens of fear. That's been the biggest thing that's helped me in my sanity and my happiness and my peace. Crazy how much your life can change when you just bring awareness to the patterns that don't serve you anymore. The more I am open to spirituality and start to seek what my magical gifts are, the more time I found I need to spend in nature. Especially when I'm out in the city or in very like high energy, very public places, I start to feel a little bit like fuzzy in the head, like nothing feels real. I need to be even more immersed in nature to balance that out. And it's kind of interesting because van life works out perfectly for me. I always try to find campgrounds that are private, secluded, out in the middle of nowhere. That way I could just like be completely to myself and the elements of the earth. And that just refreshes me altogether and just helps me bring my best self every single day. I'm so happy to have all of that behind me, and I'm excited for what the future has to offer for me now. I believe that those types of mental illnesses like bipolar, schizophrenia, autism, ADHD, anything in that umbrella, that those are gateways for people to realize how powerful they are and how naturally gifted and sensitive we are to sensing energies. Much needed skills to have in the new earth. I just want to get that word out there that everyone is so gifted. Your mind is going to want to try to conceptualize everything that is happening, but the funny thing with human language is that it's very limited in what we can express. Sometimes we just can't find the right words for it. You know, like you have an inner knowing that it's there and you feel it. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Have you experienced something like this before? Because if so, hit me up and let's be friends. I want to talk about it. You can keep up with me on all socials at Ashlita Travels. And I'm excited to share more of my learnings with you guys. Thank you.